All right, welcome to our Friday Flex series. This is your host, Keith and Joseph, and Iman's back. She's preoccupied with her wafer. And so we're doing our conclusion, our third final episode. Hey, oh, we got you. Let me get your sound off. Yeah, thank you. Actually, I can turn your sound on. Just
It reminds me of the Jack Black.
Jack Black.
And that saxophone thing he has. Dun, 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 dun. It's not a real saxophone, it's like a toy saxophone. Like a Casio keyboard kind of a thing. It sounds just like that.
So we're doing our third and final conclusion of Shaken But Not Stirred. And I wanted to start off with a story that for me was kind of the epitome of shaken and not stirred. And this comes from ancient yoga text called the Mahabharata. And it's a classification known in that class of literature as itihasa, which is like a form, kind of like a story format in which there's like a soap opera. There's so many, there's drama, there's knowledge, information, wisdom, and there's just different types of twists and turns. But the purpose of this literature is to give those who may not have, okay, another one, all right. Give those who may not have any inclination, yes, I understand what you mean. I understand what you mean.
I'd do a backflip for one of them.
Come on. and so so the purpose of this kind of series of literature is that it takes a person who has maybe no philosophical or no desire to gain some type of spiritual understanding, and it kind of spoon feeds them a nice way to get introduced to spiritual wisdom through kind of the story format, and so the Mahabharata is a written kind of historical account in which there's a battle that was waged between two families and two parts of a family. We call it fratricidal. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right.
The fraternity, the fratricidal, so they're trying to kill each other.
Yeah. So this battle was before the battle even was waged. There were 5 brothers. You lock the door? Okay. There were 5 brothers which had a series of different attributes and powers and wisdom, as well as just spiritual inclination. You want more? Okay. All right. Now, your uncle said he would do a backflip for this. Will you be willing to settle down? Maybe? Okay, all right. So these brothers were born of different origins, and they had their mother was by the name of Kunti. And so Kunti had 5 sons, and the fathers were considered of divine origin, different kind of celestial beings. So the children were somewhat endowed with special powers, and so the issue having 5 different fathers is that there was no one father. The father that was married to the person that was married to Kunti was Pandu. So Pandu was part of a large, well-established, honorable lineage, and so this lineage had two other members of the party, or potential kings. One, without going so much detail about the history of who's who, the short end of it is that the father that passed away had was supposed to be the runner-up to have the kingdom. He was supposed to be the next king. And because he had passed away before his children, before he was able to produce children, the position of ownership of the kingdom was somewhat stolen by his brother, his brother's son, his nephew. And so as the 5 brothers were growing in age and strength and wisdom and so forth, there was this friction between the uncles of the brothers and the cousins. And so when the boys, when the men were old enough to take on this kingdom, the cousins decided, well, this is not going to be your kingdom. And they said, well, how about if we share it? You all take them. So the 5 brothers said, well, you can take the majority of it. We'll just give us 5 small cities, right? We're talking about the emperor of the world. And this is, as I mentioned, this is a historical account, so it can be researched over 5,000 years ago. Previously there was one emperor who would rule the world, and there would be smaller kings and so forth. Right. And so the brothers just said, just give us five tracts of land, and that's all we want. And so the nature of greed is that it's never enough. There's never why settle? And so this was kind of the mentality of the brother's uncle. We'll just name the Pandavas. So the Pandavas did not, even though they were of the warrior class, they did not want to fight with their relatives because this is family. They said sometimes you can't choose your family, but unfortunately for the Pandavas, they had no option but to attempt to wage war. So before the war happened, they were exiled for 13 years. And so their mother, Kunti, experienced so many threats on their life from on the children's more. Okay, hey, this is more. Okay, we're teaching sign language so that just learn it. Okay. Yeah. So let me get another one ready. So the queen, you gotta eat the one you have now. Yes, ma'am. Yeah. So the queen decided, was somewhat distraught because her sons were exiled for 13 years, wrongly exiled, and so and then after the exile, during the exile, the cousins tried to different ways to kill the relatives, so that they did not, at the end of the 13 years, there was a agreement. They said if you survive without being caught, without being seen for 13 years, then yeah, you can get those 5 pieces of land. We don't mind doing that.
Because they had to be undercover as well. So they're exiled, but they had to be undercover so no one could identify them.
Yeah.
So like really tucked away.
Yeah.
Yet still in public.
So they had to remain incognito.
Incognito, that's the word.
Yeah. And so during the, yes ma'am, you tired? We've got something in your hair. Yes. No, somebody looks like you tired.
Oh, she is.
Oh, okay. Daddy will take you out here in a second. So the cousins tried to set the Pandavas' house on fire and leave no witnesses, as well as you want this?
Maybe she's trying to nurse. I'm messing with you.
So some comments don't need responses, okay? So let me go back to what I was saying. So anyway, so the cousins covered the house in some type of highly flammable material and attempted to just burn it while with their cousins inside, and then they sent different people to different spies to try to find them. So there were different encounters during the 13 years in which the Pandavas were in exile, and during that 13 years they were becoming exceedingly angry because they're like, hey, we don't want to fight. We rather stop. What I say? Stop. And so they rather be in a position where they can share. You know, let's say sharing is caring. Girl, I'm gonna share something with you don't want. Okay? Yes. Move you a little safely closer. Yeah.
That may help a little bit.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. So they wanted to share their inheritance, and instead of having to go to war. Mm-hmm. So throughout this whole time, the Queen Kunti, the Pandava's mother, she was experiencing so much pain because her only children, were being ridiculed, being harassed, abused, and pretty much everything you can think of, her children were experiencing that kind of negativity. Mm-hmm. And so so the Queen decided, no. So before this incident, after 13 years, with great difficulty, the Pandavas, they stay alive, they stay unseen for 13 years, and they submit their proposal to their cousins again. Like, hey, it's been 13 years, you all haven't found us. Can we have our 5 pieces, of land?
5 tracts of land and a mule.
Yeah, and a mule. Yeah. And so the main cousin decides, she says, you aren't getting anything. He says, pretty much over my dead body. That's what he says. He says to them. And so what ends up happening is that they with counsel from their good friend Krishna, they decide that after so many different diplomatic kind of situations or events where they try to be civilized, they realize there's no other alternative but war. And after the declaration of war was given, they meet on the battlefield, and for 19 days or so, there's this all-out war, in which considered the largest war in human history on this planet. Several millions, 100 million people passed. And so many people on both sides passed, and the Pandavas managed to make it out alive. And so the mother, being Queen Kunti being very stoic, and also very wise, after the end of the battle, she approaches God and says that despite going through all this pain and suffering, and just so there's an additional layer of information, is that one can experience pain, but when you have to watch the pain of your children, it's even worse. Like it's an even worse experience. And so to be a mother of 5 boys and see that for years they were pretty much given the short end of the stick, and people tried to kill them, and all you had to do was sit by and pray. Like, I hope that nothing bad happens, right? And then to have your great-grandchildren, beheaded, and
5 of them.
5 of them. And then so many different things happen in the war. And so back to her conversation with God, she says that despite all of the difficulty, all the suffering, all the trials and tribulations that I've experienced, I will gladly take more suffering if that means I get to think about you more. And so her reason behind that statement was that throughout the suffering, I was constantly praying. I was constantly meditating. All my energy, my focus, my attention was on prayer, and my prayer was the deepest in those moments. Mm-hmm. And so she said that even if that means that I have to continue. Okay, I'll take you out so you can. All right, I get it. All right, Daddy catches the hint. Okay, all right. So you can rest now. Let's put this. I guess it's fine. I can be singing. I'm singing. Yes. So the pain that the queen was experiencing was intense, was extremely. I don't think anybody in this world would want to trade places with a mother who's having to see their child suffer back to back for years. Mm-hmm. And so this kind of don't do that. No. So she hey, stop it.
She's a swimmer. You can tell she's kicking them little legs.
Yeah, just stay with your uncle. Okay. So she says that while I was suffering so much, I was experiencing so much happiness while praying and stop. What did I say? And she came to the realization that if suffering means that my prayers become more genuine, more sincere, and I can see or connect with you more, then let those difficulties keep coming. Mm-hmm. Actually, I prefer that over happiness. Mm-hmm. And so this idea or this mood from the Queen, in my opinion, is one of the most real events of shaken but not stirred that one can imagine. Because as I mentioned before, experiencing difficulty oneself, that's hard, right? But experiencing difficulty through your children is even worse.
Or anyone that you care about.
Anybody you care about that you can't.
Friend or anyone that you know and love. It's difficult, very difficult. Maybe a couple of things that actually stand out to me. Of course, it is a very beautiful pastime or event where one is going through and definitely experiencing some trials and tribulations of great magnitude and great severity. But as I'm listening, and I'm also thinking about just as individuals, how we can actually, one, learn from that event, but then also how we can look at it within ourselves.
Stop.
But before I jump into that specific detail, I was just thinking of other examples that we see in this world where it seems like we need to have, in one way, shape, or other, not saying that having trials and tribulations, that anyone will want anything bad to happen to them. I'm not saying that.
Right.
But it seems that when I use the word need, I'll explain here, is that it seems that whenever there is some test, some trial, some tribulation, we give up all of our petty concerns. We put all of our differences aside, just like with the 9/11, for example, right? The Twin Towers being under attack. I think the Pentagon was also hit as well. So much going on. And everyone witnessing, and people who were even physically there, seeing the towers falling and collapsing, their loved ones may be in the building, hurt, injured. Other people that they may or may not know also, again, experiencing that difficulty. And then to be in a position where you can't even do anything if you live states away, maybe on the other side of the nation. And that type of event allowed for us to come as a nation and as we the people, for lack of better words. It's like we put aside all of our pettiness. Oh, someone is black or white or green or purple or whatever. And it's like we all finally came together as a unit, as a country, as a nation. We stood together and we said, okay, what can we do, to address this situation, and let's come together as united, one nation. And not saying that anyone is wanting that, but it seems as though we need some trial or tribulation or something there, so that way we can be able to focus a little bit more on what is most important, and so that we do not find ourselves distracted by petty or insignificant things in life. Because it seems as though when we get comfortable or complacent or petty, then it's like we just go after each other for no reason. And over stupid stuff too.
Right.
You know, just like
you cut me off on the road.
Right, like road rage. You got road rage. You got people who, I remember maybe a few years ago, hearing about, I don't know who, but I don't know if it was a group of individuals, but there were just people or individuals, not everyone, but just a few, that were running around cutting off the catalytic converters off of people's vehicles. You know, in other words, it's like if something isn't there, some trial or tribulation, if it's not there, it's like we end up creating some type of drama or creating something, right? Just to, I don't know, is it if one is looking for a thrill or what? But it just seems as though there has to be something so that we can actually realize, or at least come to gain some more clarity and be able to focus on what is really most important. It seems like we as people tend to be more disciplined, and we think about things a little bit more differently than, you know, if we weren't in such a challenged position or situation. So again, not saying that people are wanting anything bad to happen to themselves or anything, but it just seems as though as individuals we tend to do better when there is some discomfort, right? Just like if one is going to the gym to make gains in terms of building muscle, you can't do the same thing you did the day before, for lack of better words. In other words, we always have to push outside of our comfort zone if we at all want to be able to test our limits and actually even want to speak or be able to grow and graduate to another level. So again, when you were narrating that, I was just thinking about how in one sense, we need some degree of austerity to just be able to accept some type of austerity so that it pushes us to be even that much better than what we were the day before, you know, for our own growth, for our own betterment. We talk about personal development. How does one, for example, one can say, I have an anger issue, but if you live off in the forest by yourself, how do you test your anger? But if you are in circumstances where maybe someone does cut you off, right? Right. And they're testing your patience, you know. Yeah. You know, do you become angry or do you have a little more understanding that, okay, maybe that person woke up on the wrong side of the bed or maybe they're rushing, maybe it's an emergency, you know, whatever it may be. So let me have a little calmness, some little peace here and let me just shall I say, check myself before I wreck myself, or let me just reassess the situation and look at it from a different perspective. So it seems, again, that it's ideal in one sense to have some or to accept some type of austerity. And it's to be very direct. When we say austerity, austerity should not be something simple. Austerity is actually meant to be challenging or difficult anyway. But it shouldn't be, again, to the extent where it's nonsense. You know what I mean? Like someone wanting something bad to happen to them. It shouldn't be like that, but it should be something like, let's say, for instance, if we're in school, right? We're learning something. Then our teacher, we may not necessarily test ourselves, but our teacher tests us. Right. And our teacher tries to give us other perspectives, other concepts and theorems and postulates to consider and look at so that we can expand the way that we think and be able to see things from different perspectives. So that's what I mean by in terms of like a push in the sense of a scholarly or an academic way. Of course, as parents, naturally when one has children, we will naturally experience some...
As this foot tries to go in my face.
we will naturally have to take on a little austerity.
Yes.
Because if we are not giving ourselves austerity, well, maybe baby man will give you a little just to make sure.
Yeah, just to make sure you haven't missed out on
Maybe you missed out on anything.
your daily dose of austerity. Yeah,
just to make sure you're not, missing out. You thought we forgot you. Here's a little austerity for you, Dad.
Yeah, exactly.
So, relationships. That's the other thing that's beautiful about relationships, right? When you interact with another person, we are always, actually every moment, not just this or that moment, but actually every moment, if we taking a look at neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, they also point this out that we as individuals should see every moment as an opportunity for growth.
Stop.
Right? And so when we utilize or see every opportunity as a moment of growth, then we'll see each moment as basically a stepping stone to our own success. Mm-hmm. And so we may not necessarily be perfect in everything that we do, but without a doubt, we can do things right.
Exactly.
We can hold ourselves accountable and responsible. We can walk up to a person if we may have bumped into them and say, you know what, I didn't realize that I was rushing, or I didn't realize I did this, but I do want to make sure I apologize. Again, we may not have done something perfectly, but by accepting accountability and responsibility, we can at least do something right, So, relationships, how can we go deeper in our relationships with each other? How can we connect even that much more deeply, have more meaningful existence, a fulfilling life? All those, in truth, I find to be perfect opportunities for that growth. And I would consider it to be almost like a natural austerity, right? Because you can't change the other person.
Right, yeah.
The only person we can work on is ourselves.
Yeah.
Or the only person we can change is ourselves. And so in terms of how can we apply this as individuals, going back to that story of Queen Kunti, for some of us who are, you could say, spiritually inclined, the word, for lack of better words, scripture. A lot of times we may find great wisdom and advice and guidance through scripture. If many of us are not necessarily inclined to look at scriptural texts, there are many amazing thinkers out there in the world, philosophers, some may refer to them as. I remember one of the first books that you had mentioned to me, I didn't know about at the time, but it was called As a Man Thinketh, and it's written by James Allen. And so, again, I'm sure he's written a lot of other books as well, but that book I found, it was a small book, but very enlightening in one sense, you can say, and that we can take so much and learn so much from that individual. Neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, which has so many tools and exercises that we can apply, but tools that we can actually put in our tool belts, and hopefully we're working on our toolbox and our tool chest, and eventually we get ourselves a workshop of tools, a wall of tools. But to have such a tool shed, to have such a plethora of tools and skills that we are acquiring, that we can actually utilize in not only becoming a better individual, but also having deep, meaningful relationships with each other, and to have a rich, fulfilling life. And that's what I get when I hear that story from you about Queen Kunti saying, hey, thank you, Krishna, because the more trials and tribulations I'm experiencing, the more hardships I'm going through, the more I get to see your beautiful face, the more I get to think about you. And my prayers are that much more intense. They're not distracted. They have intention behind them. Right. And so when we live our life with such intention, then we find that our lives become very rich and fulfilling. And so that's what I get by hearing that story in terms of how, as an individual, how can we actually really apply that to our lives in terms of really looking at our relationships And instead of running from an opportunity to grow, instead of running from an opportunity to learn from another person, let's see how we can put aside our differences. And let's see how we can even learn new things. Maybe someone has a tool, that they have. Maybe it's a modified tool. These farmers, I'll tell you, in terms of just in general, this may seem off topic, but I'll get back to the point here, is that a lot of the tools that we have today, a lot of them actually are tools that were created by farmers. Because in such an agrarian society, let's say you have a tractor. Well, there's not a Home Depot or Lowe's or, all these hardware shops nearby just around the corner. And in fact, those hardware and tool shops were far and few in between. You yourself had to be a blacksmith, for lack of better words. And so you had to know how to weld. You had to know how to manufacture and create tools so that you can fix your own machines.
Right.
Because, if someone has 500 acres or however amount of land, and then your neighbor also has a large quantity of acres as well, and you're hundreds or 200 miles or more away from a city, no one's going to come to your rescue anytime soon. You can't call AAA in that situation. Right. They won't get to you for another 2 or 3 days, whatever it may be. So people had to know how to make their own things. And definitely, I'm sure they patent things, and they're hopefully making money still. But but the point that I'm making in short is that someone may have a technique or a tool or skill, and maybe they may be from a different religious practice. Just like I was sharing with you the other day, I come from a Roman Catholic background, as many of you don't know. And so I spent 7 years with the Society of Saint Benedict, referring to the Benedictine monks and priests. And I spent 5 years in the Society of Jesus, which is the Jesuits, that follow Saint Ignatius Loyola. So in regards to Saint Benedict of Nursia, and looking at his rule, like his, you could say, I don't want to use the word laws. Well, you could call it like a law. Instructions or guidelines. That's the word I want to use, guidelines. Like the guidelines that he gives in terms of how one as a monk should even live their life. And then when I think about how, and he's like the monk that has, in Italy, has provided such guidelines for just the Western world monks. So a lot of the Catholic monks, a lot of them, even though they may not even be Benedictine monks, but he has given such guidelines that most other Catholics tend to follow as well to some extent. And of course, prior to him, not too much prior to him, was actually St. Anthony of Egypt, of the Coptic Orthodox, Coptic referring to Egypt, Orthodox tradition. So he had his rules that he had given out and guidelines for those of the Orthodox practice. But with St. Benedict, when I think about what he states and points out, and then what we see in today's time, and I'm thinking to myself like, wow, even though I come from this background, I didn't know those details. But then when I think about the practice of Bhakti Yoga, and then I start seeing all these similarities and connections. Just like in Bhakti Yoga, we talk about Bhakti meaning love and devotion to the Supreme. And a lot of us, I'm not sure which background everyone comes from, but a lot of us may have been raised in a God-fearing type of environment or place of worship. But then when I read St. Benedict's points on humility, he points out that when we are properly following these 12 steps of humility, that we should no longer be God-fearing, but we should actually become God-loving. And so when I see what he lays out, and then I think to myself, wow, what he's pointing out are wonderful tools or things to consider that we can actually apply in our own lives in terms of being better people. And so I'm just giving this as just simply an example that it is actually very healthy to learn from various different sources. Another example that I can give, something that's also very practical, is also having a therapist, right? We may read and do different things on our own, but then when we actually have a therapist, the therapist also has tools and techniques that they can also share. Even though it may not necessarily be scripturally based, but still there are tools and techniques that we can learn and apply in our own lives so that we can have a much deeper, meaningful, fulfilling, life and improve the relationships that we have amongst each other. So that is just something that, again, comes to my mind in terms of how we can actually take things and actually apply it based off of that actual story of Queen Kunti that you were sharing.
Now, I'm curious, and you may not know the reference, but the 12 pillars or steps from Saint Benedict, you mentioned 12.
He talks about these little 12 steps of humility, but the rule, there's a lot of rules.
It's
a thick book.
Is that where the 12 steps come from? Like the 12 step, you see in Alcoholics Anonymous, like 12-step program.
The AA, Alcoholic Anonymous, I am not going to assume that they got it from him.
Got it. Because they are Abrahamic based, like the 12 steps. So I didn't know if it was maybe Saint Benedict that.
Well, if one can say Abrahamic or followers of Moses or so, but you know how each path has something unique in terms of how they go about it.
Yeah.
I don't know if he went the Protestant route, the Catholic route, or the Orthodox route.
Gotcha. Okay.
Ooh, she got some big old boogers.
Oh yeah, Daddy gonna pick them here after we get off the
Fingers
camera.
too big.
After we get off the camera, no, you got. Anyway, yeah. Anyway, so I was just curious about that point though. It'd be fascinating to see if there is some connection between the 12 steps and that point.
One thing I will say is this: from what I've studied in the Quran, the Bible, the Vedic or any other yogic texts or corollaries of the Vedas, is that there are so many similarities, especially when looking even at just the fundamental understanding of things.
Right.
There's so many similarities that I'm sure if you were to investigate that further, I'm sure you would find some reference, or that you know what I mean? You would be able to say, oh, I saw something to this effect, but in this, Bhagavatam or in this
Torah,
Gita or in this Torah or Quran. I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm confident you'll find something, because most of these highly intelligent or philosophical practitioners, when I say practitioners, I should be very clear, is that those who practice a spiritual path, or those who are on a spiritual path, these, practitioners of faith, although they come from different backgrounds, a lot of them have a lot of similar conclusions, of points that they make. Just like we hear about thou shalt not kill.
Right.
You can look at any scripture, doesn't matter what religion anyone say that they are, and you're going to basically see the same thing.
Right.
Thou shalt honor thy mother and thy father.
Yeah. Put some respect on that.
Put some respect on it. Put a G on it,
Put a G on it.
Mata G. Pita G.
Yeah,
Put some G on it, And you're going to see everyone will say basically the same thing. Even if one does not believe in God, maybe someone considers himself atheist, But if one is pursuing their highest truth or their higher self, and they have some solid core values, respect, humility, truthfulness, cleanliness, like all that, gratitude, all that's gonna be in there.
Right,
even
right.
if they say, I don't believe in God.
Yeah.
So my point is, I'm sure you're gonna find something that supports.
Yeah.
Because I know they started off, as far as I understand, when speaking to Mr. T, and that there is some, and a few other different people too, that there actually is a Christian basis. Same thing like with the Boy Scouts. That also had a Christian basis as well. It was based off of Christianity, the Bible. So basically using the scripture to become responsible. And I believe there are ladies in the Boy Scouts. I don't think they're called Boy Scouts anymore. I think they may have changed their name, because I think they're actually, I have to double check. I heard something, but I'm not quite sure. But I think they've actually opened the door so that females can actually join, quote unquote, the Boy Scouts and learn the same skills as well.
Because I think it's Boys and Girl Scouts.
Well, I know there were two different.
Yeah.
Because there was a Girl Scouts, not a headquarters, but a very important office down the street, like a half a mile from where I live. They have like the whole thing, like it's all Girl Scouts. I don't think there's any guys in that group. But I know in terms of Boy Scouts, or if it's not Boy Scouts, maybe it's the Eagle Scouts, that they've actually allowed some of the ladies to join in as well, because there are certain skills and techniques. But really, these two groups, the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts, their origin is Christian based, and it's so that one become, upstanding or outstanding, citizens, following the life of Christ, or at least the example that Christ has given.
Right. Let's see, what's our time?
The time is now.
The time's now. The time is yours. Okay, so we got another 2 minutes. So one of the points that I wanted to really highlight was that, and you touched on it too, but this aspect of humility, and also recognizing that from the Queen's perspective, Queen Kunti's perspective, despite being honored with the kingdom after, of course, the trials and tribulations, after being honored, oh girl, I'm gonna get these boogers. After being honored with the kingdom, she literally said that I would do it all over again if that meant to have the same, or to have an increased level of devotion towards God.
Yeah.
Now we have to. Hey, you're not slick. Now we have to think about the depth of that kind of mentality, that realization, because as human beings, we're pleasure seeking, right?
True. Very true.
She's finding her pleasure, Iman's pleasure, is being curtailed right now because I'm not letting her grab my microphone. And so she's frustrated. Now she's trying to fall asleep. And we see how many things in life, when we don't get what we want, we become frustrated, right?
And she don't become angry.
And they become angry. So we want happiness, we want pleasure, we want these things, right? And nothing is wrong with being happy, to be clear.
But we want the real happiness. We
don't
want to be cheated. We want the real McCoy.
Yeah, real McCoy.
We want the real McCoy. We do not want to be cheated.
And so So the queen realizes that anything short of love, of divinity, love of God is actually cheating.
Yeah.
And so if the suffering in what she's encountering brings her closer to that source, then I'll have what I'm having. You know?
Exactly. When we take a look at the Hajj, you know, when one goes on Hajj or even if one goes on pilgrimage, really what is that about? You know? Or what to speak of how churches and other places of worship, why were there so many steps just to even get into the building? Is actually tied into that point that you're making. Is not necessarily the end. Yes, we will get there, but it's actually about the journey itself.
Ooh, say it again. Preach.
It's not about getting there.
Where?
Getting there.
Okay.
Though you will get there.
Okay, all right.
Ha! But what is about? Ha!
Preach.
It's about the journey.
And?
Because that journey is very sweet. It is awakening that love, especially if it's in relationship to the divine. It does awaken that love. And it is really that journey. That's really what it's all about. It is about that journey.
Yeah.
You know, you can, once you get to that destination, we see this so many times. Someone gets across that finish line. Then you feel like everybody else when they were running with Forrest Gump. Forrest Gump was like, I guess I'll go home now. And then what did everybody else say? Now what do we do?
Yeah.
Now where do we go? You know, it's about the actual journey. And so in other words, it's about the service and actually being happy, rendering the service. The reward that we get is actually the service itself. Like when we talk about relationships, yes, you may receive so many different awards, or you may obtain and reach that goal and perhaps even surpass it. But it's really about being actually engaged in that service. We see and hear so many times in the yogic text, even what to speak of again, going back to Saint Benedict. What does he state? In one of his mottos, ora e labora, meaning prayer and labor, work. Praying and work. Actually being engaged in the service. Because it is really being in the service. It is that journey. It is that service. It's not, you know, yes, you will get the end goal. You have an end goal in mind. But it doesn't mean that once you get there, everything just stops. But that you want more service. I want to continue to be on this journey. You know, therefore, whatever trials and tribulations I must undergo, please bring it, because that allows me to awaken my heart and my love for you. It allows me to glorify you that much more. And it allows, shall I say, it brings me that much closer to you. Quoting, not the great philosopher, but quoting a wonderful play called Godspell. Came out a long time back. I think maybe in the 70s. There was a song called Day by Day. And you can go to Google and you can just type in Day by Day, Godspell. Very beautiful song. And it says, day by day, oh dear Lord, three things I pray. To see thee more clearly, love thee more dearly, follow thee more nearly, day by day. And so this whole process of, again, the journey itself, so that we can see thee more clearly. Right? Queen Kunti, give me more trial and tribulation so I can always see you, always be thinking about you. Give me all these things so I can love you that much more dearly. Let me have all these trials and tests and tribulations so that way I can follow thee more nearly. Because the only true happiness and bliss that I experience is transcendental in nature. because only that transcendental happiness and bliss is eternal. Thus, even in the scripture, the Lord says, or we are, shall I say, cordially invited to not build our treasure houses on this earthly planet where moth and flames can burn it, but to actually build our treasure houses in the heavens where it cannot, again, be touched by flame, by moths, so forth, but it is eternal in nature. We're cordially invited to do so.
Yes, I always like that. Cordially invited. But this is such a lofty perspective, because anywhere else you will not hear the idea of sadness or frustration leading to an increased relationship with divinity, but this takes a I don't know if visionary is the right word, or it takes someone who has sharp wit about themselves to understand that actually in this world, everything is temporary. All the relationships, all the acquisitions, all these
are nonsense.
Are nonsense. Yeah.
Is it really worth it?
Is it really worth it? And so
complain about stupid stuff.
Yeah,
really?
It's dumb.
Petty. Pettiness.
Yeah, our pettiness. And so it comes to the realization that there must be something greater. There must be something worthy of acquisition.
Yeah.
And if while experiencing difficulty, I happen to stumble on what is worthy of acquisition, then that must mean that must ultimately be the goal. Therefore, if it causes me to continue gaining deeper realization, deeper relationship, then so be it.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, some people can just by hearing can develop that relationship, right? It doesn't have to be through suffering.
There are some who really are truly on that level. But you're right, they can hear. But many of us, we don't understand all the times what our parents are telling us unless we feel it through that belt.
Yeah, unless the belt's talking and we're doing the walking.
I got it now, Mama. I got you.
Yeah.
I'm not doing that again.
Exactly.
But then at the same, but like you rightly pointed out, because there's different levels of intelligence, and I won't go too far into it, but like our moms and dads will tell us or give us certain instructions, it doesn't make sense to us. But then when we actually either get married or we have children, then what our parents told us, it's like, now I see what they were telling me. Didn't make sense then, but now it makes sense, So, yeah, sometimes we need to. It's not easy to understand the water in the ocean until you jump into it. It's just like like a swimming pool. You won't be able to understand it properly until you jump in. Like you have to experience it, But for others who are really advanced, then yeah, they can just hear it and understand it. Very intelligent, sharp-witted, like you were saying.
So that story has always struck me as fascinating, as well as it gave me a different perspective. Sometimes we have this fantasy idea about the nature of this world. And the fantasy is that maybe I could really be happy here.
But if that's really true, then what's up with virtual reality and video games then? That's even more fantasy. Like,
Yeah.
it's not a real place. It's virtual reality, or, it's a video game.
Yeah.
It's like if someone really think they can really be happy here, then why, it fascinates me. Not that we have to go into that topic right now, but it's like, some people do. They jump right into video games. They're trying to find some happiness, but that's the reality. Everyone is seeking happiness. Everyone is seeking pleasure. We just don't know where to get it.
Right. Yeah. And so, and that is why, because of our lack of understanding about the nature of this world, this universe, so many of us are shaken and stirred.
Wait a second. Say that one more time. You said a lack of...
I don't know. It came out smooth.
Came out smooth, like Coke 45, huh? It came out real smooth. Don't let the smooth taste fool you.
But, this lack of understanding about...
That part. The lack of understanding. Every day, we turn on the news, and we can listen to certain types of music and songs. And any other medium, could be newspapers, could be social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all those things, right? And we hear all the time that someone was either injured, killed, could be suicide or murder, illness, that there were wildfires or that there were fires somewhere, or some type of distress, like some type of tsunamis creating such a, or hurricanes creating such a natural disaster, so tornadoes like this. So I would say I beg to differ as to whether or not we actually understand. If we see all the time around us that there is nothing but just tons of suffering. There's so much, you have people who still prejudge other people. We have stereotypes and prejudice and so forth like this. There's so much suffering in this world. I'm sure we understand to some degree that there really isn't, the happiness that we're seeking. But I would probably say that we do not see enough examples that transcendental happiness or transcendental lifestyle,
spiritual joy,
or spiritual, journey. I don't think we see enough examples. Because in the news, I'm telling you, I can go to Google right now or, pull up any newspaper, whatever, and you don't really hear too much about, so-and-so's on the spiritual path, and they're experiencing transcendental happiness.
Right.
Come join us, like, I'm just saying, like, I don't come across that in the news often. I just hear everything else about these people are bad. These people are bad. This person went over to this place, because they were Asian or Caucasian or black or whatever, and just bombed the place or did something, of harm and suffering and hurt to other people. But I or how to make more money. I hear about that. Like if you invest here, if you get this Bitcoin and all the other different things, different opportunities, or if you invest in this property, like this, I hear of these things, but I don't really hear much in terms of just general media. I don't really hear much in terms of, wow, please hold fast to your faith, I don't really come across too many words that encourage people in their spiritual practice. Regardless of what they practice. I don't come across enough of it.
If you can, there's a couple comments.
Oh yeah, praise the Lord, brother. Trying to scroll down.
Start scrolling. Oh, unplug the elevator. It died. Unplug the.
You said unplug. Oh. Oh, Butterfingers. I should be able to scroll now? Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
All right. Just as there... Okay, let me make sure I get this all the way up in here. A crisis can connect us with higher power, or it can create unity. Yes. And then we go this way. Just as there is joy in taking our attention off ourselves and helping someone else, it gives some pleasure. True. Let's see here. So true, we have to learn for ourselves. Parents can say, don't do this all day long, but till you understand fully why, it doesn't always stick, unfortunately. Yep. That was the last.
Move the camera a little bit so it's on both of us. I'm a little seated myself. No. Now it's on me, but primarily, let's share it. Let's share it.
I want to be like this. I'm going to sit sideways like this.
But yeah, no, to that point, because we live in a society where there's not many role models, and also because by nature, when
we're naughty?
Yes, by nature we're naughty, and somewhat stubborn. We have to touch the fire.
Touch the fire.
We gotta see if it's really hot.
We gotta feel the fire.
and that, and of course.
You may have to speak up a little bit more.
Yeah. Sorry. And don't turn it all the way. What are you doing?
I'm trying to bring it closer, brother.
I can talk louder.
Okay, there we go.
And by understanding that, we genuinely are hard-headed in this world, and so therefore we don't take to good counsel often.
But there's a reason why we're hard-headed too.
Why are we hard-headed?
Because we got bad examples. Meaning, when at one point we had wonderful examples, or later on we see that those examples were, meaning individuals started to exploit and manipulate people, then it destroys the trust. And so it's very difficult for someone who may not understand something of a higher intelligence and understanding to trust someone that may be in that position, because we've seen them, as we even heard last week, the pastors breaking into somebody's house and more other things. And so it's like, how can one trust anyone that is supposed to be a person of the cloth, for lack of a better word, or an authority figure of spiritual knowledge, or even what to speak, doesn't even have to be spirituality. Maybe it could be just another person, like in a political position. And we see that they're doing so much stupidity, It's very difficult to trust. So it's very difficult to listen and to accept what they may have to say, even if it may be the right thing. But quoting James Baldwin, I hear what you say, but I see what you do. Sorry, I hear what you say, but I see what you do. James Baldwin. So there is a reason for the hard-headedness. We in one sense may say some people may not have a reason to be hard-headed, but for others, there's a reason. Just like even with this whole vaccine or vaccination, right? All the prior tests, in terms of just on the medical side of things, people of color, doesn't matter where they were from, medicine was not even, did not consider them. It didn't even consider women. It was only
Caucasian males. That was medicine. Later on, they started incorporating, women. Later on, they started incorporating others who have melanin in their skin, And for the longest period of time, they were putting out syphilis or typhoid. They were making women sterile because they did not want, that particular population to come back. So they were, in one sense, trying, I think it's called genocide or something like that. Trying to do like some genocide kind of a thing. So in terms of just medical side, it's very difficult to accept, should one even get a vaccine or so many other different things, because look at the history, and then we can look at in terms of sales, car sales, someone who's a dentist or someone who says that they're a doctor. The word that was given for doctors who were fake, they were called quacks. They were called quacks. Q-U-A-C-K. So it was very difficult for people to trust, because there were so many imposters out there. So yeah, there is a reason for hard-headedness. Yeah. It is not unreasonable in one sense. But the thing is, we should not allow being hard-headed. And I'll just put it this way. We should not allow being cautious, because we have to protect ourselves, sleeping, eating, mating, fearing, or sleeping, eating, mating, defending. So we have to naturally protect ourselves in one sense, but we shouldn't do it up to the point where it prevents us from actually growing and becoming better people, like advancing, progressing, graduating. So it's okay to be hard-headed, but up to a certain point. When you see this person is really genuine and true, then you have to,
humble yourself.
Yeah, you gotta humble yourself.
Yeah.
Humbleberry pie.
You gotta take a slice.
I'll take the whole pie.
Take the whole pie. Yeah.
Whipped cream, please.
Yeah. So, but really good points that you mentioned, and very good points that Mom, Ebony,
yep.
and have made.
And that's all from that one story.
Yeah.
In terms of like everyone sharing what comes out of that one story, in terms of how one can apply that one story to their everyday life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Shake 'em and not stir. All right. So this concludes our 3-part series of Shake 'em and not stir.
Shake 'em up, shake 'em up, shake 'em up, shake 'em.
Wake 'em up, wake 'em up,
wake 'em up, wake 'em.
So again, thank you so much. Next week we'll have a new topic, and so Flex and man's flexing right now in their sleep. So.
Regulators, mount up.
All right.
Stay flexing, everybody.
Flexing.
Stay hydrated.
Hydrated.
Live responsibly. Don't let the smooth taste fool you.
Yeah, exactly.